हरे कृष्ण। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। Hare Krishna. So we welcome you all to the third day of this course, Rediscovering Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti Part 2. So for the last 2 days, we have been discussing on this 11th topic in the second wave of the eastern section of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This very important topic of what are the duties expected of a devotee who is qualified for practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. What is he expected to do? What is he not expected to do? On this subject matter, we have been having a very elaborate discussion. Hopefully, today we will complete that discussion and move on to the next topic. I am taking this little elaborately because this is a point of contention. This has traditionally been a point of contention within ISKCON. So we are trying to get the understanding from, this is our Abhideya Grantha. Our Abhideya Grantha means the primary book of practice for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas is actually Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So what does Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu present, and how it is supported by the statements from Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, the two other primary texts that we follow, and how do we understand the desire of our founder Acharya in line with the explanation of the subject matter that is discussed by Srila Rupa Goswami and various other literatures. So that is what we have been trying to do. We are just halfway done, little more left. So hopefully you will maintain some patience and so that we can go through this subject matter completely. Of course, nothing is complete. Everything is growing in bhakti. Nothing is static. Everything is dynamic. Anandambudhi vardhanam. The bliss grows day by day. If you think that this day in your practice of bhakti has been the best day of your life, the most happiest day, no, you are wrong. Better days are coming. So in the same way, Krishna's powers are growing, his omniscience is growing, everything is growing. Within bhakti, nothing is static, everything is dynamic. So I can't say this is a very comprehensive presentation of this subject matter because we are battling with time. This is the age of 5-minute talks, 10-minute talks. Beyond that, people do not have the ability to concentrate and assimilate subject matters. So, so therefore, in this kind of a rapidly declining age where the ability to concentrate is rapidly declining, there is a severe limitation to how elaborately you can actually discuss a particular subject matter while hoping to hold the attention of all the audience. So we will try our best not to make it too elaborate, but at the same time the essential points of the subject matter should be covered. So that's what I am trying to do. So hopefully you will bear with me so that we can take this discussion to its logical conclusion today. So we have been discussing this topic of duties expected of a qualified practitioner of bhakti. So we saw that if every single human being is qualified for practicing bhakti, and in the name of bhakti if he gives up varnashram duties, is he not committing a sinful activity? Will he have to perform some karmakandiya prayaschitta? In response to this, Srila Rupa Goswami we saw mentioned that ananushtanato dosho bhaktyanganam prajayate na karmanam akaranad esha bhakti adhikarinam nishiddha acharato daivat prayaschittam tu na uchitam iti Vaishnava Shastranam Rahasyam Tadvidam Matam. So he mentioned that four essential points that a person qualified for practicing bhakti, especially Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, he is at fault for neglecting to perform the essential limbs of bhakti. He is not at fault for neglecting to perform the varnashram duties. The third point is that if he happens to commit an abominable act due to the influence of his past vasanas, then he need not resort to karmakandi atonements to atone for that process. And the fourth point, bhakti alone acts as the atonement. And Krishna takes personal care of reinstating that sincere devotee back on the path of righteousness. So this was essentially the summary of what we have seen. And then the next theme that we discussed was, what does it mean to not perform varnashram duties? Is a devotee irresponsible or ungrateful by giving up his varnashram responsibilities? Is that what the scriptures recommend? And then, did Arjuna really follow the instruction of Sarvadharman Parityajya? Because he apparently it seemed that he did not give up his Varna Dharma. He did fight the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and he did follow his Ashrama Dharma of taking care of his family. Then how can you say that Arjuna practiced Sarvadharman Parityajya? So this we tried to understand yesterday. It was actually a clarion call for a change of paradigm that Krishna was putting Arjuna through. Change your paradigm, Arjuna. And what is the change of paradigm? We tried to understand through the guidance of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, who in his Manas Siksha says, Na dharmam, na dharmam, shrutigana niruktam kila kuru, vraje radha krishna prachura paricharyam ihatanu. My dear mind, don't concern yourself with the thoughts of whether it is dharma or adharma. Start thinking in terms of what would be pleasing for Radha and Krishna and Guru. So that is the change of paradigm that Krishna was trying to ask Arjuna to make. Don't think in terms of your dharma and adharma. Start thinking in terms of what would be pleasing for Krishna. Anukulyasya sankalpo, pratakulyasya varjanam. Make that transition. In this context, we saw that there could be three kinds of people, the karmi, the dharmic person and the devotee, who may act on these three different paradigms of raga sankalpo, dvesha varjanam, dharmasya sankalpo, adharmasya varjanam, and anukulyasya sankalpo, pratikulyasya varjanam. And in this context, we saw that an activity can be performed in all these three different paradigms. So therefore, one cannot clearly say just based on the activity that he is performing a material activity or a dharmic activity or a devotional activity. So one has to try to understand within which realm, in what kind of paradigm is he functioning. That needs to be properly understood. And then we saw that how that actually there is a significant overlap of what the Dharma Shastras proclaim and the Bhakti Shastras proclaim. So therefore, many of the activities may fall within the so-called activities which are prescribed in the Dharma Shastras may actually fall within the realm of Bhakti Shastras also. But then the same activity could be performed on the paradigm of Anukulyasya Sankalpo, Pratikulyasya Varjanam, and that is what makes that activity as a devotional activity. Then we try to understand what is the basis of this Varnashram system. We understood the basis of this Varnashram system is pleasing Vishnu or Vishnu worship. Through pleasing Vishnu, through Vishnu worship. Atha Pumbir Dvijashreshta Varnashrama Vibhagashaha Swanushthitasya Dharmasya Samsiddhir Haritoshanam. Haritoshanam is the prime center of this whole Varnashram system. Dharmasvanushtita pumsam vishvaksena katasuyah na utpadayed yadiratim shramayeva hi kevalam. So based on these verses, we try to understand and reconstruct what in Krishna's understanding is a Varnashram system. So we conceptualized a Varnashram disc with the center of that, it's a set of 3 concentric discs. With the center of those 3 concentric discs is worship of Vishnu. All these personalities who are within this Varnashram disc, they worship Vishnu. But along with worshipping Vishnu, they do have their own prescribed duties according to their qualification. And we identified 7 kinds of qualifications. There could be sub qualifications within. We are not going too much into that. But we are just seeing that there could be 7 kinds of people who are qualified for Vishnu worship and who fall within this Varnashram system or Varnashram disc. At the centermost disc is Shuddha Bhakti, where everyone is worshipping the prime activity or the only activity is worship of Krishna through the Navada Bhakti. And the middle disc consists of those practitioners who may not be qualified to practice Shuddha Bhakti, but predominantly they practice Bhakti, but that practice is tinged with either Karma, Jnana or Yoga. Based on this, there are Karma Mishra Bhaktas, Jnana Mishra Bhaktas and Yoga Mishra Bhaktas. And then the peripheral disc or the third disc is the disc where Karma, Jnana or Yoga predominate, but there is an element of Bhakti. So all these 7 categories of people worship Vishnu, and on the basis of this Vishnu worship, they are accepted to be part of this Varnashram system. But the question is that, do the Shastras actually recommend that everyone, all the 7 categories of people within this Varnashram system are actually expected to perform the Varnashram duties as prescribed in the Dharma Shastras? We tried to understand based on the Bhagavad Gita that actually not. It is mentioned about the Jnana Yogi that yastu atmaratireva syad atmatriptascha manava atmanyeva hi santushto tasya karyam na vidyate. For such a Jnana Yogi whose heart has been completely purified, who is able to focus only on the Atma, he is not expected to perform his Varnashram prescribed duties. Why? Naiva tasya kritenartho na kriteneha kaschana nachasya sarva bhuteshu kaschid artha vyapashraya. Because such a person does not gain anything by performing his Varnashram duties. He does not lose anything by non-performance of his Varnashram duties. So therefore a Jnana Yogi is not expected to perform his Varnashram prescribed duties according to Bhagavad Gita. And the Ashtanga Yogi also, only in the early stages he performs. Arirukshor muner yogam karmakarana muchyate yoga rudasya tasyaiva shamakkarana muchyate. In this way, only in the early stages is an Ashtanga Yogi expected to perform the Varnashram duties for purification of his heart. But in the later stages, he is expected to actually give it up. And in the same way, Krishna also talks about the Bhakti Yogi by telling, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam raja aham tvam sarvapapebhyo mokshayishyami. You don't worry, Arjuna, you give up your Varnashram duties, give up your other dharma and just surrender unto me. And we understood the meaning of that surrender. The meaning of that surrender is a change of paradigm. Now, so therefore, in our understanding, we concluded that only 2 categories, the Karma Yogis and the Karma Mishra Bhaktas, are the only 2 categories of people who, due to lack of qualification to give up their prescribed duties, they have to continue performing their prescribed duties. So why? What is the role of the prescribed duties? We saw through various purports and commentaries that the purpose of the prescribed duties is to actually purify the heart. So purification of heart is the primary purpose of the performance of prescribed duties. Then the question arises, if purification of heart is the primary purpose of the performance of prescribed duties, then how would a Bhakti Yogi purify his heart if he neglects to perform his Varnashram duties? So through various sections we tried to understand that the essential means of purification of the heart of devotees is actually the practice of bhakti and the presence of the Supreme Lord within the heart, and in other sections we saw remembrance of the Supreme Lord actually cleanses the heart. This is what we saw in the early sections of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Kleshagni, how the impure desires within the heart are cleansed by the practice of bhakti. This is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in the beginning of his Shikshashtakam. The first benefit of chanting the holy name is Cheto Darpana Marjanam. So the cleansing of heart, bhakti is, so devotees are not dependent on the performance of their varnashram duties to cleanse their heart. And then we saw this elaborate discussion of how Krishna takes personal responsibility of cleansing the heart of the devotee through this discussion on this verse, Shipram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim nigacchati kaunteya pratijanehi name bhakta pranashyati. We saw this elaborate discussion on this verse. I will not go into the details of this, but the essence we have already discussed, that how by practice of bhakti, definitely the heart becomes purified and Krishna takes personal responsibility for this. So in summary, we saw that the four essential points, that how about the duties expected of a qualified Vaidhi sadhaka. The first thing, he is at fault for failing to perform the essential angas of bhakti. Second, he is not at fault for neglecting to perform his varnashram duties. And third, if he commits a forbidden activity, he need not perform the karmakandiya activities of prayaschitta. And fourth, for such a person, bhakti alone acts as his atonement. So this is what we covered yesterday, a rapid recap. It was not a rapid recap, but this was a recap of what we have seen in the first 2 days actually. And so now, as I promised yesterday, now we will start seeing the proofs. So Srila Rupa Goswami himself gives ample proofs to establish these 4 points that he has presented. Because ultimately, one should not conclude, oh, this is all Srila Rupa Goswami's opinion. These are not Srila Rupa Goswami's opinion, but this is the opinion of the scriptures, and Rupa Goswami by quoting amply from the scriptures, is going to establish these 4 points which are the essential recommendations for the practicing Vaidhi sadhaka. First proof that he gives is a verse, famous verse from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Uddhava Gita. So Krishna speaking to Uddhava. So he says, Sve sve adhikare yanishta saguna parikirtitah viparyayastu doshasyat ubayor esha nishchayah. So he says, Sve sve adhikare yanishta saguna parikirtitah. Guna and dosha. Guna means something that is right, and dosha is something that is wrong. So what is the definition of, is there a universal definition of right and wrong? Or you are doing the right thing, you are not doing the right thing. Is there a universal definition for it? In one sense, yes. In another sense, no. Is killing an animal a pious activity or an impious activity? Is it a recommended activity or not? Is it, in one sense, if you see a Kshatriya hunting for an animal in order to learn fighting on the battlefield is considered dharmic. So therefore, the question of dharma and adharma cannot be completely discussed, or you cannot even start to discuss about whether an activity is dharmic or adharmic without essentially discussing adhikar of that person. What is the adhikar? What is the qualification? What is the nishta of that particular person? Is he qualified for karma? Is he qualified for jnana? Is he qualified for bhakti? Is he qualified for ashtanga yoga? Or if he is qualified for karma, is he brahmachari, a grihastha, vanaprastha, or a sannyasi? Or if he is a grihastha, is he a kshatriya or a brahmana or a vaishya or a shudra? So many such considerations are there which decide whether a particular activity is dharmic or adharmic for that particular person. So therefore, a discussion on guna and dosha, a right activity or a wrong activity, cannot even start if you do not define what is the qualification of that particular person. So here he says, Sve Sve Adhikare. So now with this understanding, Krishna gives a universal definition of right activity and wrong activity. He says, right activity means if your activity matches your adhikar. So if you are a Jnana Yogi, that is your qualification, then if your activity are those activities which are prescribed in the Jnana Shastras as your prescribed duty, then that is guna, else it is dosha. In the same way, if you are qualified for Ashtanga Yoga, then if your activities match the activities which are prescribed in the Yoga Sutras as prescribed activities for an Ashtanga Yogi, then it is guna, else it is dosha. In the same way, if you are qualified for karma, then if your activities match the activities prescribed in the Dharma Shastras according to your particular varna and your particular ashrama, then it is guna, else it is dosha. And if you are qualified for bhakti, then if your activities match the activities recommended for a devotee as given in Bhakti Shastras like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, then it is guna, else it is dosha. So therefore, Krishna gives a very beautiful universal definition of what is an appropriate activity and an inappropriate activity. Appropriate activity means Sve Sve Adhikare Ya Nishta Sa Guna Parikirtita. Performing an activity that suits your adhikar as recommended by the Shastras which also suit your adhikar, then it is called as guna, else dosha. Very simple definition. Srila Jiva Goswami says, with the words Sve Sve Adhikare indicates one's own qualifications, indicates there must be many different qualifications. So actually 3 prominent qualifications. Qualification for karma, jnana and bhakti are indicated here. Therefore, for the person qualified for pure bhakti, performance of actions of karma or jnana and failure to perform bhakti are both faults. That is what is indicated in this verse. It is not explicit, but it is implicit. So therefore, based on this particular verse, point number 1 is proved. Failure to perform your own limbs is a fault. Doshaha prajayate. Bhaktiyanganam akaranat doshaha prajayate. That is the first point is indicated here. And second point, if you need not perform the activities of the other qualified people, like the activities of the karma yogis or jnana yogis or ashtanga yogis need not be performed and should not be performed with faith also. Sometimes one may perform certain kinds of activities which may be prescribed for some other practitioners without faith, because one may not necessarily want to create some social tension. Like say for example, a particular person, he comes from a family where they have been traditional, very strongly rooted demigod worshippers. So yearly once or twice, the whole family, the extended family comes together and they go to the temple of their Kula Devata or whatever. So if this person refuses to go, then it may create a very severe social tension. Under such circumstances, a person is allowed to go, but he cannot worship with faith. And worshipping without faith is as good as not worshipping. Because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, 17th chapter, last verse, Ashraddaya hutam dattam tapastaptam kritam chayat asaditi uchyate partha nachatat pretyano iha. My dear Arjuna, any act of sacrifice or charity or hutam dattam or tapasya, any act of sacrifice, charity or austerity or any activity when performed without faith is as good as not performing that activity, because it will not give any result in this life or next life. So faith is a prerequisite. So anything performed without faith is as good as not performing it. So this person, in order to pacify his family members, not to create unnecessary agitation, may actually do it, but without faith within his heart. Such an activity is not considered to be an activity performed. So therefore, under such circumstances, it is okay. Otherwise, it is not needed that one needs to that one should perform activities which are prescribed for some other practitioners. So in this way, the first two statements are established by this particular proof that Srila Rupa Goswami is presenting here. Then the next verse he quotes is again from the 11th canto, but this is from a different conversation. The conversation between Nimi Maharaj and the Navayogendras. Another very popular conversation from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto. Swapada moolam bhajata priyasya tyaktanya bhavasya hari pareshah vikarma yachot patitam katanchit dhunoti sarvam hridi sannivishta. So here it is mentioned Swapada moolam bhajatah, a person who worships the lotus feet of Krishna, tyakta anya bhavasya, after giving up practice of karma, jnana, yoga, everything. That should be clear. Tyakta anya bhavasya, which means full shelter should be only Krishna's lotus feet. You can't take partial shelter of Krishna and partial shelter of karma, jnana, yoga. That is not allowed. Tyakta anya bhavasya hari pareshah vikarma yachot patitam katanchit. Somehow or other, if he happens to commit an abominable activity due to his past vasanas, dhunoti sarvam hridi sannivishta, I present within the heart of that person will cleanse the heart of that person. This is Krishna's promise. So therefore, bhakti alone acts as the atonement. That is indicated, the fourth point. And of course, the third point is implied, that he need not perform any karmakandiya atonement for cleansing his heart. That is also indicated. So point 3 and point 4 are proved by Rupa Goswami presenting this verse. Another verse from Uddhava Gita, 11th canto. Tasmad mad bhakti yuktasya yogino vai madatmanah nagyanam nacha vairagyam prayashreyo bhavediha. Famous verse. Krishna says, therefore, O Uddhava, tasmad mad bhakti yuktasya. Therefore, for a person engaged in my devotional service, yogino vai madatmanah, one who is completely, who has his mind fixed on me, na jnanam nacha vairagyam, neither jnana nor vairagya or any other process is the means of attaining success. The means of attaining success for such a person is actually his practice of Navada Bhakti. Na jnanam nacha vairagyam prayashreyo bhavediha. In fact, jnana and vairagya are byproducts of practice of bhakti. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitah Janayatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahaitukam. Krishna says. This is in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this verse proves that the means of success is not practice of any other paths like karma, jnana or yoga. So this proves the second point, that you need not perform any other, it is not a fault for non-performance of karma, jnana, yoga. And it proves the first point also. But he should be madatmanah, he should be mad bhakti yuktas, he should be actually practicing bhakti. So otherwise it is a fault. So first 2 points are again proved by Rupa Goswami's presentation of this verse from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Another verse again from Uddhava Gita, very important section of Srimad Bhagavatam, where practically any point on Siddhanta that the Acharyas try to establish is mostly based on this conversation between Krishna and Uddhava, the Uddhava Gita, where Krishna says, Tavat karmani kurvita na nirvidyeta yavata matkata shravanadavva shraddha yavanna jayate. My dear Uddhava, till when should one continue to perform his varnashram duties? He says, Tavat karmani kurvita. He should perform his varnashram duties till na nirvidyeta yavata, till he develops non-attachment, till he becomes detached from, till he becomes convinced that material enjoyment is not the goal of my life, till he becomes convinced that the goal of my life is not material enjoyment. Even though I may succumb to material enjoyment every now and then, but my goal of life is to please Krishna. The moment he understands this, and how will such an understanding come? Matkata shravanadavva shraddha yavanna jayate. Till he develops faith in the practice of pure devotional practices, he cannot get this conviction. But the moment he gets that pure devotional faith, from that point onwards, he can give up his varnashram duties, or rather he can give up the paradigm of dharmasya sankalpo adharmasya varjanam and accept the new paradigm of anukulyasya sankalpo pratikulyasya varjanam. So this is Krishna mentioning, and this verse indicates the first 2 points, that for a qualified practitioner of bhakti, he is at fault for non-performance of the essential limbs of bhakti, but he is not at fault for giving up the duties of varnashram. Another famous verse from the instruction of Narada Muni to Vyasadeva in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Tyaktva swadharmam charanambujam harir bhajan apakvo atapate tato yadi yatra kvavabhadram abud amushyakim ko varta apto abhajatam swadharmatah. He says, Tyaktva swadharmam, if a person gives up his varnashram duties, Harehe charanambujam bhajan, and worships the lotus feet of Lord Hari, yadi apakvaha atap tato patet, and if he either does not attain perfection in this life, or if he may happen to deviate from the path of bhakti, he says, Yatrakva vabhadram abhudamushyakim, what kind of misfortune will afflict him? There is no misfortune. On the other hand, swadharmatah abhajatam kova artaha aptaha. On the other hand, a person who may perfectly follow his varnashram duties, but if he does not worship Krishna, what does he gain? He does not gain anything. So, in this way, the first 2 points are again established by this verse. He says, you don't gain anything by not worshipping Krishna. That is, the first point is established. And then second point was mentioned, that if you are properly practicing bhakti, even if you don't practice your varnashram duties, it is not a fault. Yatra kva vabhadram abhud amushyakim. What kind of a misfortune will fall? No misfortune. So again he quotes this verse to establish this point. This is all not my made up proofs. Actually all these verses are quoted by Srila Rupa Goswami to establish this very critical point of what is expected of a practitioner of bhakti, at least within the Gaudiya Vaishnava realm, what is expected of him. Another verse, famous verse again from the 11th canto, Uddhav Gita, Ajñāyaiva gunandoshan mayadishtan apiswakan dharman santyajya yassarvan mam vajet satu sattama. Krishna says, Ajñāyaiva gunandoshan. So this person understands the guna, means the positive, how the positive result of performing varnashram duties, how the heart of the practitioner becomes cleansed, then he becomes qualified for performing the higher paths of Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. All of that he understands. Doshan, he also understands the fault of neglecting to perform prescribed duties or varnashram duties, that how it is sinful, it will not help one progress, it will not purify the heart of that person. He knows the positive points about practicing varnashram and the negative points about neglecting varnashram. He knows all these. After knowing, what does he do? Dharman santyajya. He gives up that varnashram and does what? Mam Vajet, and he worships me. What is Krishna's opinion about such a person? Satu Sattama. He is the topmost amongst all human beings. He is the topmost amongst all practitioners. Why? Because he has understood his qualification to be bhakti, and he has rightly given up karma jnana yoga and taken full shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna under the instruction of Krishna. So such a person is perfectly following the instruction of Krishna, the mood of Krishna, the heart of Krishna. Therefore Krishna says, Satu Sattama, he is the best amongst all human beings. Another famous verse, again from the 11th canto, but this time from the conversation between the Navayogendras and Nimi Maharaj. Devarishi bhutapta nrinam pitrinam nakinkaro nayam rinicharajan sarvatmanaya sharanam sharanyam gato mukundam parihritya kartum. He says, Yaha gato mukundam sharanam, one who has surrendered unto the lotus feet of Lord Mukunda, who is Sharanyam, who is the giver of liberation, parihritya kartum, after giving up all the other obligations, sarvatmana, and he has taken up to the path of bhakti with all seriousness. Nakinkaro nayam rinicharajan, such a person is not a servant, or he is not obliged or obligated to Deva, Rishi, Bhuta, Apta, Nrinam, Pitrinam, because a human being takes these facilities from all these various kinds of personalities. He takes some facilities from the Devatas, some from the Rishis, the knowledge from the Rishis, the amenities from the Devatas, and from other living entities also he is dependent for his sustenance. From his relatives and friends he is dependent for his sustenance. His Pitrus he is dependent for his sustenance. So in this way, he has to express his gratitude in some way or other, and the Vedic path says various different activities that are recommended for that person to express his gratitude towards all these people. But if he has surrendered to Krishna, then not that he does not feel grateful towards these people, but he knows how to express that gratitude by expressing his gratitude to Krishna, the controller of all of them. Just as like watering the root of a tree, all the, not just the root gets the water, but the branches and the leaves and the flowers and the fruits, everything gets water. So in this way, he knows how to fulfill that obligation by watering the root of the tree. So that is what he says, Nakinkaro nayam rinicharajan. Giving up all obligations here means that the devotee rejects the distraction of one's attention caused by thinking that Indra and Chandra must be worshipped. Oh, I should worship Indra for rains, Chandra for the juice in the fruit, Varuna for water and all these things. He says, no. It is true that through them I am getting, but they are only the secondary providers. Primarily, the primary provider is Krishna. So by expressing my gratitude to Krishna, a part of that gratitude that is due to Indra, Chandra, Varuna, everything, they all get their dues. The Pitrus get their dues, the Devatas get their dues, the Rishis get their dues. So in this way, like in South Indian marriages, if you see, there are two ways of performing a marriage. This is especially with respect to the bride's father, because he has the responsibility of arranging the marriage. So there are two ways of conducting it. He takes personal responsibility of everything. So he personally, there are 10 activities which he needs to do. He has to find a appropriate marriage hall. He has to arrange for the catering. He has to arrange for informing the guests. He has to arrange for the guest receptions. In order to receive the guests, he has to have proper gifts for them, and all that he can personally do it individually, or he can give it to one contractor, and that one contractor takes care of all the 10 things. just that he may have to spend little extra money. Of course, I am not recommending one over the other, but I am just trying to give an example to establish this point. So it's not that the father is neglecting the responsibility of doing all these activities, but just that he is simplifying this whole thing by having a one point contact for taking care of all these responsibilities. So in this way, the person understands that I can show my gratitude towards all these personalities by watering the root of Krishna, by worshipping Krishna. Having surrendered, that person has destroyed all prarabdha karma and consequently destroys being situated in varnashram. So the moment a person takes up to the path of bhakti, subsequently his joy and sorrows are not due to his prarabdha karma, it is personally given by Krishna. This theme is repetitive in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. We can take a whole different session to understand from various references how this theme is recurring in Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So such a person who has surrendered to Krishna is not obligated. But that person is no longer obliged to perform regular varnashram duties. And one of the common objections to this verse that is presented is that Sarvatmana, the word Sarvatmana is used here. Sarvatmana means in all seriousness. Are you so serious that you can give up these individual obligations? Someone asks. Are you so surrendered? So surrendered means what? Complete surrender. That is possible only at the stage of bhava and prema. That kind of surrender you cannot expect from a sadhaka. But at least in intent he is surrendered. His faith is clean. So therefore, Sarvatmana here means Jnana Karmadi Anavrita Bhakti. Is he committed to performing a kind of devotional service which is not covered by Jnana, Karma, Yoga, etc. If that commitment is there to perform the kind of bhakti which is Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhyanavritta Bhakti, then that person is Sarvatmanaya Sharanam Sharanyam. If the highest level of surrender as performed by Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami is what is mentioned here in this verse, then Rupa Goswami would not quote this verse in the section on Vaidhi Sadhana. He is quoting this verse as being relevant for the practice of Vaidhi Sadhakas. Why would he quote this verse then? So therefore, and coming to the last and very important verse that Srila Rupa Goswami quotes, Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarvapapebhyo Mokshayishyami Mashuchaha. So giving up all dharmas, Sarvadharman Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja, surrender unto me alone, O Arjuna. Aham Tvam Mokshayishyami Sarvapapebhyo. I will deliver you from all the sins, Mashuchaha, do not worry. This is the verse translation. Very beautiful explanations given to this verse by both Srila Prabhupada and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. We will spend a few minutes trying to understand the import of this verse. So this verse, as you all might know, comes after the Manmana Bhava Madbhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru verse, where Krishna says, think about me, meditate on me, Arjuna, become my devotee, worship me, offer obeisances to me, like that. Now the question may be asked by that person, oh, am I supposed to perform this meditation, Manmana and other processes, Madhyaji, Mam Namaskuru and so on, along with my Varnashram duties or without them? How should I perform? This is the question that Arjuna might ask Krishna. Krishna in response says, Sarvadharman Parityajya, forget about all these other things. Giving up all duties of Varna and Ashrama, surrender unto me, Krishna says. One should not say that Parityajya means sannyas. He is recommending Arjuna to take sannyas. He cannot give such an instruction to Arjuna because Arjuna as a Kshatriya is not qualified for sannyas. Only Brahmanas can take up to sannyas. So therefore, that cannot be the meaning. And then you cannot say, no, Krishna is recommending sannyas for other people and he is instructing these other people through Arjuna. That also cannot be said because Arjuna himself is qualified to receive the instructions of Krishna, and Krishna has given personal instructions to Arjuna throughout Bhagavad Gita, so you cannot say that this is a generic instruction given for others. Nor should one say, oh, Parityajya means just to give up the result of that activity, not the activity itself. This cannot be the truth, because he quotes different verses. Many of those verses we have already seen. Like we just saw Devarshi Bhutaptananam Pitranam. In this, it is mentioned that Nakinkaro Nayam Rani Charajan. So such a person can give up those personal obligations and performance of those Varnashram duties. And we also saw Tavat Karmani Kurvita, till when one is expected to practice Varnashram duty, till he develops that faith in bhakti. Ajnayaiva Gunan Doshan also we saw. Dharman Santyajya, yes Sarvan Mam Bhajet. He gives up all the Varnashram duties and worships me. So again, in this purport to this verse, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is quoting these verses to say that the meaning of the word Parityajya should be understood in light of these verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. The meaning can indeed be understood correctly by the prefix Pari, which means completely. You should completely give up. So if someone says, are you Sarvatmana, are you so surrendered that you can give up these obligations? Then the answer is, no, I may not be so surrendered, but I am trying to surrender. Why you are pushing me towards other devatas? Do you want me to completely surrender to Krishna or not? What are you suggesting? Surrender on to me, surrender only to me, Krishna says. Mam ekam sharanam vraja. This means that there should be no worship of devatas, Ashtanga Yoga, Jnana or Dharma or other elements in that surrender. So one may say, I don't have such a strong faith in Krishna. Should I complement that weak faith with some devata worship? Then what will happen? That weak faith in Krishna will become weaker. Is that what we want? And by following my orders, you should not fear some loss on your parts by giving up the Nitya Dharma, Nitya and Naimittika karmas. Don't fear that, oh, if you give up your Nitya karmas and Naimittika karmas. So Nitya karmas means daily Trikala Sandhya that a person does, that is, those is 3 times offering worship to the Sandhya, during the Sandhya time to the Supreme Lord. And Naimittika karmas are, the Shraddha ceremonies which come once in a year or periodic, things like that. He says that you should not fear that you will lose anything by non-performance of this Nitya or Naimittika karmas. In fact, I only gave the order to perform Nitya and Naimittika karmas to people of particular qualification. Through the Vedas, I only gave Vedanta Krit Veda Viteva Chaham. I am the Vedanta Krit, I am the writer of Vedas. Veda Vit, I know the import of the Vedas. I only told in the Vedas, perform your Nitya karma, perform your Naimittika karma to a particular class of people. Now I am telling to you, Arjuna, give all that up and perform only bhakti. Now this is my instruction. Now I am ordering you to give them all up completely. Is there sin in not performing Nitya karmas? He says no, rather it is the opposite. In performing Nitya karmas, you will commit sin because you are engaging in an activity that is not prescribed for you, because of disobeying my order. I told you Sarva Dharman Parityajya, you don't have trust in my words. So in this way he is explaining. So I will free you from all sinful reactions, from whatever reactions exist from the past and recent past, and whatever reactions arise, sinful activities or that you may commit in the future. I take responsibility for that. And for me it is not impossible, because I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Please have trust on me. I am capable of taking away all your sins. But these other people whom you may surrender to, they are not capable of removing all the sins. Taking you as the means, I am giving instructions to the whole world. Do not feel grief for your own welfare or for the welfare of others, O Arjuna. I am taking responsibility. You just believe me. So, and then he quotes this verse I myself have accepted the burden of freeing you from sins and freeing you from samsara. I have taken that responsibility. Why are you bothering? Didn't I tell you? Ananyas chintayanto mam yejana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. I will carry what you lack and I will preserve what you have. I had taken personal responsibility for that. But you don't think, oh, why should I throw my own burden on my master? Why should my master carry my own burden? Yoga kshemam vahami aham. Why should I make Krishna carry? He says, Krishna says, please don't deprive me of one activity which I love to do. I love to carry my devotee on my shoulder. This is an activity which I love to do. Please don't deprive me of that activity, Krishna says. This is not an activity which I am forcefully doing. This is an activity which gives me pleasure. It is no strain at all for me who am most affectionate to my devotee. And Srila Vishnu Jagadhakur, in commentary to this Ananyas Chintayanto Mam verse, he says, it is like a husband carrying his wife out of affection. He does not feel that burden. Or he gives the example of a wife carrying the burden of all those golden ornaments. That is not a burden, because that the wife knows, the wife or the woman knows that it enhances her beauty, and because she is committed to presenting herself in a very beautiful way to her own husband, her wearing those golden ornaments is actually not considered as a burden by that woman. Neither is this husband considering carrying that wife a burden. It is an act of affection. He loves to do it. In the same way, Krishna says, please don't deprive me of that one activity which I love to do, which is carrying the burden of my devotees. So, Srila Vishnu Jagadhakur completes or concludes this purport in a very interesting way. Nothing else remains to be instructed. It is. This is the last instruction. Nothing else remains to be instructed. Sarvadharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. This is my instruction, Arjuna. Thus, the scripture has been concluded. He says, rest of the scripture is only a detail. The actual conclusion of the scripture is 18.66. Sarvadharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. So, in this way. So, therefore, all said and done. So, now we have seen comprehensively that that how through these various verses from Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, it is quite clear that what is Krishna's expectation from a person who has taken up to the path of bhakti in all seriousness. You may say, oh, he is not serious. Then the only solution is become serious. There is no second alternative. If you have taken up to the path of bhakti, take up to it completely. So, in this way we have seen how a practicing devotee is not expected to perform his varnashram duties, that is not expected of him. But he has to perform the duties of bhakti. But all said and done, this brings us to the most crucial juncture. Srila Prabhupada did say that 50% of his mission is establishing varnashram. How do we understand this? Is Srila Prabhupada directly trying to contradict the teachings of Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita? Is he trying to contradict the presentation by Srila Rupa Goswami? How do we understand this presentation, this emphatic statement made by Prabhupada not once but many times over? 50% of my mission remains incomplete, that is establishment of varnashram. This has been historically recorded. So, how do we understand? Of course, this for the last many decades has been a very hotly debated topic. What exactly did Prabhupada want? And many exalted devotees are engaged in trying to understand this subject matter. So, based on my understanding, based on my studying of Srila Prabhupada's books, I will present what I have understood, which is in line and not contradicting with the presentation of Srila Rupa Goswami here. Because we should not establish that Prabhupada wanted to establish something that is in contradiction with the teachings of the past acharyas and the Bhagavatam. So therefore, we should, in establishing Prabhupada's mood and mission, we should establish it in such a way that it is in line with the Guru Shishya Parampara. With that premise, we will, for the next few minutes, we will see, it's not a comprehensive presentation, but very brief because of shortage of time. I will present what does it mean that Prabhupada wanted to establish Varnashram. The first option is establishing Varnashram institution as a stepping stone for the outsiders to take up to Shuddha Bhakti. So, if the rest of the world, for the rest of the world, this Varnashram could be a stepping stone to take up to Bhakti, Shuddha Bhakti in future. How? Because if you see, as we do say from Bhagavatam, Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha, any kind of fallen person can take up to Bhakti. But when a fallen person does take up to Bhakti, it takes a very long time for the process of Bhakti to cleanse his heart. But if the person, prior to taking up to Bhakti by the mercy of a devotee, is actually following Varnashram, then that practice of Varnashram keeps his heart fairly clean. Then, when the devotee comes, sows the seed of Bhakti within his heart, then that Bhakti will not have to work so much to cleanse the heart, because the cleansing to a great degree has already been accomplished by that person following a proper Varnashram system. So in this way, Varnashram can act as a bridge for the outsiders to eventually take up to Shuddha Bhakti. It is just like if some of you have had an experience in doing some agriculture or gardening, in an organic way. So we use compost. So compost means you try to collect some leaves and other biodegradable waste and put some, sprinkle some cow dung water on it, which has the essential microbes which can break down this biodegradable matter into compost. So every year we do this composting, collect all the leaves and sprinkle gobar water, and in 6 months it becomes ready to use compost. Okay. But if you see, if you have a shredding machine, if you put all those leaves into the shredding machine and shred that leaves into a fine powder, and then if you add that cow dung water over it to compost, instead of taking 6 months, the composting will complete in 1 or 2 months. It accelerates this process of composting. But the shredding machine cannot create compost. The shredding machine can only make it into powder. Eventually, you need to sprinkle cow dung water on it to actually compost it. Similarly, in order to attain Krishna Prem, Varnashram is not capable. Only Shuddha Bhakti is capable of delivering one Krishna Prem. But by practice of Varnashram, one can cleanse one's heart, which would otherwise have to be done by the practice of Bhakti. So in that way, Bhakti will have to do less work to cleanse. So this is the first reason, in my understanding, why Prabhupada wanted to establish Varnashram, is to create a bridge for the outsiders to eventually come to Bhakti. And this, I will quote a small excerpt from one of the morning walks of Srila Prabhupada, February 9th, 1976, just 1 year before he left this planet in Mayapur. So this is a conversation. Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Prabhupada are there, and other devotees are there, but it is basically a conversation between the two of them. Prabhupada says, no, ISKCON is not going to be social reformer, but as far as possible we can help. Our main business is how to make everyone Krishna conscious. That is our business. We cannot take up, but if possible, we can take up all the system of Varnashram. Tamal Krishna Maharaj says, if Varnashram is neglected, then how can there be proper functioning of society? Prabhupada says, no. If the society chants Hare Krishna seriously, then it is all right. Never mind whatever is done. It does not matter. It does not matter. Papi tapi jata chilo harinama uddharilo. This is the power of Harinam Sankirtan. If one is absorbed in Krishna consciousness, so all benefit is there. So long in the bodily concept of life, we require the Varnashram Dharma. Otherwise, there is no necessity. So for outsiders for whom even accepting that we are not this body but we are spirit souls, what to speak of Jivera Swarubhai Krishnera Nityadas, for such people, Varnashram is a good platform to start with. Tamal Krishna Maharaj says, yes. Prabhupada says, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you have read in the 8th chapter of Madhya Leela, talk between Ramananda Rai and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So perfectional life, how it begins, Prabhupada says. This question was raised by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Rai replied, it begins with Varnashram Dharma, regulated social life. Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, oh, he rejected that. Prabhupada said, not rejected. Yes, it is not very important. Eho bahya. This is external. Aage kaha aar. If you know something more, you speak, he told Ramananda Rai. So the Varnashram Dharma is a good help, undoubtedly, but it is not important for Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, how could I start this movement in the Western country? Prabhupada is asking. There was no Varnashram Dharma. But that did not hamper my movement. Now people are surprised how these people have become such great devotees. So it was not based on Varnashram Dharma. No, because the whole movement is spiritual. It starts from the spiritual platform. Aham Brahmasmi, Jivera Swarubhai Krishnera Nityadas, Samashritaye Padapallavaplavam and so on. Now, just like here is a gap. So this is a morning walk and Prabhupada shows a gap while they are walking. So Prabhupada says there are two ways of crossing this gap. You can either build a small bridge, you can cross, or you can jump over it. Prabhupada says, so you can go by the bridge, and if you can jump over, that is also going. That is also going. So to become Krishna conscious means to jump over the spiritual platform immediately. And this Varnashram Dharma, Sannyas, Varnatyaga, Karmatyaga, these are different steps only. These are gradual steps to lead one to the path of Shuddha Bhakti. But if you become Krishna conscious seriously, then you jump over all these steps, you go immediately. That lift and that staircase. By staircase, you go step by step. By lift, you can go immediately, faster. So in this way, Prabhupada explains that Varnashram can act as a bridge for the outsiders to come to the level of Shuddha Bhakti. This is one understanding. The second understanding is accepting the Varnashram occupations, Patan, Patan, Yajan, Yajan, Dana, Pratigraha for the Brahmanas, or Krishi, Goraksha, Vanijyam, Vaishyakarma Swabhavajam, Vaishyas, cow protection, agriculture and trading. Like that, the bona fide occupations that are Varnashram occupations that are defined in the scriptures. Accepting Varnashram occupations in the mood of Anukulyasya Sankalpo as a viable alternative for modern Ugra Karma lifestyle. The modern lifestyle is Ugra Karma lifestyle. So, but if you accept the occupations as prescribed in the scriptures within the Varnashram system, by that it is a viable alternative to overcome the Ugra Karma lifestyle. This Prabhupada quotes in the purport of the 7th canto, 14th chapter, 10th verse. So Prabhupada says, these are the different occupational duties by which men should earn their livelihood, and in this way human society should be simple. Various kinds of Varnashram livelihood. At the present moment, however, everyone is engaged in technological advancement, which is described in Bhagavad Gita as Ugra karma, extremely severe endeavor. This Ugra karma is the cause of agitation within the human mind. So if you have a simple occupation, it will not agitate the mind. And that simple occupations are given in the Shastras according to one's Varnashram. Men are engaged in many sinful activities and becoming degraded by opening slaughterhouses, breweries, etc. In this way, they are spoiling their lives. In all of these, grihasthas are involved, householders are involved, and therefore it is advised here with the use of the word api that even though one is a householder, one should not engage in severe hardships, ugra karma. So what should he do? One's means of livelihood should be extremely simple. As far as those who are not grihasthas, brahmachari, vanaprasthas and sannyasis, they don't have anything to strive for advancement in spiritual life. This means that 3/4 of the entire population should stop sense gratification and simply engage in Krishna conscious activities. Only 1/4, that is a grihastha, should act according to the laws of restricted sense gratification. The grihasthas, vanaprasthas, brahmacharis and sannyasis should endeavor together with their total energy to become Krishna conscious. This type of civilization is called Daiva Varnashram, where the grihasthas are engaged in simple activities as prescribed in the Varnashram occupation, and the other three classes, the sannyasis, brahmacharis and vanaprasthas, are simply engaged in Krishna conscious cultivation. One of the objectives of the Krishna consciousness movement is to establish this Daiva Varnashram, but not to encourage so-called Varnashram without scientifically organized endeavor by human society. So, as a means of organizing the society has to function where everyone can peacefully practice Krishna consciousness. So, for the peaceful progress of Krishna consciousness, the people cannot engage in Ugra karma. So, in order to take them away from this Ugra karma practice, the simple practices of occupations as prescribed in the Varnashram occupation, they can be accepted. This is the second reason. And the third reason is, third and the last reason, we will end with this. Why should the Krishna consciousness movement be restricted only to those who are Anya Bilashita Shunyam? Is this movement meant only for those who have no other desire other than the desire to please Krishna? Should other people stop worshipping Krishna? So how would you accommodate? As we saw in the Varnashram disc, the 7 categories of people, only 1 category are pure devotees. What about the other 6 categories? Some are bhuktikamis, some are muktikamis, some are siddhikamis. The Ashtanga yogis are siddhikamis, Jnana yogis are muktikamis, Karma yogis are bhuktikamis. Should they worship Vishnu or not? Is there a scope for such kind of people within ISKCON or not? Bhagavatam says, Akama sarvakamo va mokshakamo udaradihi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether you have an akami or a sarvakami or a mokshakami, you can worship Krishna. And that is one of the purposes that Prabhupada established ISKCON. Even though within his life, he could attract and establish the practices which are perfect for the middle circle, the Shuddha Bhaktas. What about the middle and the peripheral circle? How do you incorporate and accept those people within the system of ISKCON? So Prabhupada, commenting on this verse in the purport of this, he says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is described in the Bhagavad Gita as Purushottama, the Supreme Personality. It is He only who can award liberation to the impersonalists by absorbing such aspirants in the Brahma Jyoti. The Brahma Jyoti is not separate from the Lord, as the glowing sun ray is not independent of the sun disk. Therefore, one who desires to merge into the impersonal Brahma Jyoti must also worship the Lord by Bhakti Yoga. Whatever may be your desire, perform Bhakti Yoga as recommended here in Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhakti Yoga is especially stressed here as the means of all perfection. In the previous chapters, it has been stated that Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal of both Karma Yoga, Etavan, Sankhya Yoga, Abhyam, Swadharma Parinishtaya, Janmalabha Parapumsam, Ante Narayana Smriti. through this verse it was established that everyone should eventually practice Bhakti Yoga only. Bhakti Yoga, thus being the supreme means of self-realization, is recommended here. Everyone must therefore seriously take up the methods of Bhakti Yoga, even though one aspires for material enjoyment or liberation from material bondage. So how do you incorporate these people with other desires which are strongly rooted? How do you incorporate them within the realm of ISKCON? This is the third understanding of Prabhupada's wanting to establish Varnashram. So thank you very much for your patient listening. I know I have rushed through this last section because of lack of time, and I really wanted to complete this section today. So tomorrow, with a brief recap, especially of the section that we have done today, we will start the next section, which is a long section, the 64 limbs of devotional service. We will start this discussion tomorrow. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Rupa Goswami Pad ki jai. Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu ki jai. Hare Krishna.